Shalom, and welcome to Light of the Hill Ministries. And in today's teaching, we will be continuing on our study of Genesis. If you want to follow along, I will be posting this in the comment box below. And now, onto the teaching. And Yahweh Elohim said to the Nakash, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all livestock, and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you are to go, and eat dust all the days of your life. And I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. To the woman he said, I greatly increase your sorrow and your conception. Bring forth children in pain, and your desire is for your husband, and he does rule over you. Genesis 3, verses 14 through 16. Throughout the Torah, we witness the battle between the offspring of the mixed seed and that of the pure seed. We may follow this conflict in the children of Adam, in Cain and Havel. Cain is of the earth, or lower realm. Cain rises up to kill righteous Havel. And likewise, Ishmael is likened to a wild donkey, animal nature, that seeks the destruction of righteous Yitzchak. Esau, a hunter and a man of the field, seeks to kill righteous Yaakov. In all of these instances, notice that Yahweh brought forth two different natured seed. This is the fruit of Adam's disobedience. Apollos shows us the two natures in man, what he tells us in Romans. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the matters of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit, the matters of the Spirit. For the mind of the flesh is death, but the mind of the Spirit is life and peace. Because the mind of the flesh is enmity towards Elohim, for it does not subject itself to the Torah of Elohim, neither indeed is it able. For those who are in the flesh are unable to please Elohim. Romans 8, verses 5 through 8. This battle continues between the serpent and the sons of Adam. This battle started with the curse of the serpent, who was separated from the beast of the field and the livestock, and becoming a curse forever. So here is a picture of a clear distinction now put in place between that which is clean and unclean. And we're told in scriptures to make distinctions between the clean and the unclean in Leviticus 20, verse 25. And you shall make a distinction between clean beasts and unclean, and between unclean birds and clean. And do not make yourself abominable by beast or by bird, or whatever creeps on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. And you shall be set apart to me, for I am Yahweh. For I Yahweh am set apart, and have separated you from the peoples to be mine. The word distinction in Hebrew is badal, Strong's H 914, and means to be divided, separate, make a difference, make a distinction. And it is also translated here as separated. We are to do the opposite of what Adam and Hawa did, and that is make a difference between our animal nature and submit our spiritual nature to Yahweh. Another way of putting it would be to separate ourselves from the works of darkness. Ephesians 5, 7 through 11 says, Therefore, do not become partakers with them. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Master. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is well-pleasing to the Master. And have no fellowship with the fruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. But in order to do this, we must learn what is of the light and what is of the darkness. Only the Torah itself can show us the difference. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Psalms 119, verse 105. For the command is a lamp, and the Torah a light, and reproofs of discipline a way of life. Proverbs 6, verse 23. The serpent will always appeal to our animal nature because he himself is of that realm. That there will always be a constant battle between the flesh, animal nature, and the spirit. For the flesh lusts against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh. And these are opposed to each other, so that you do not do what you desire to do. Galatians 5, verse 17. Thus a need for a mediator to show us the way, the truth, and the light, Messiah himself. Unfortunately, many are not separating themselves and losing the battle being waged against them. And in doing so, they never are able to get to the place where they hear the clear word of Yahweh that equips them and builds their faith. In verse 15, we see the clear promise of Messiah coming in the flesh by the seed of the woman. Again, Yahweh is a mighty one of distinction. But here, he's making a separation between the seed of the serpent, the flesh, and the seed of the woman, who Messiah will come through, the Spirit. The promise is that a seed of the serpent will bite the heel of the seed of the woman. The seed of the woman, however, will bruise or crush the head or authority of the seed of the serpent, thus reversing the damage done by Adam's fall. What should stand out for us is the phrase, her seed. Seeing that biologically, women do not have seed, men do. So the question is, what woman would have seed? The answer is a virgin would. If she had a seed created inside of her, then she would have seed. Thus, this may be understood as an allusion to the virgin birth of Yahushua. I would say that this would be the first prophecy about Messiah coming to save mankind from their sin. And we can clearly see the battle between the serpent, adders, and Yahushua all throughout the good news. And seeing many of the Pharisees, Sadducees, coming to his immersion, and said to them, brood of adders, who has warned you to flee from the coming wrath? Matthew 3, verse 7. Serpents, brood of adders, how would you escape the judgment of Gehenna? Matthew 23, verse 33. This enmity and conflict between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman clearly finds its climax in the battle of man's mixed word with the pure word of Yahweh. In Revelation, we see that the word of Yahweh prevails. And he sees the dragon, the serpent of old, who is of the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. Revelation 20, verse 2. And because Hawa gave into the serpent's deception, she was sentenced to have desire for her husband. What we must make clear here is that this is not the desire as in showing affection, but rather a desire to be in position of a man to try to assume a headship. The Hebrew root word here for desire is tashuka, Strong's H8669, which means a longing or desire, craving. It carries with it the understanding of ambition. And so so she would strive to have dominance over him and desire his position. The enemy knows full well that if he can target the desiring woman, then he can penetrate the home. And so men need to recognize their rightful place as head of the home and have charge over his wife. The Hebrew word used here for rule is mashal, Strong's H4910, which means to rule, have dominion, reign. The husband, therefore, was put in the woman's life to have authority over her, but with love and care towards his wife, as Paulus teaches us in Ephesians 5, verses 22 through 32. Wives, subject yourselves to your husband as to the master, because the husband is the head of the wife, and also the Messiah is head of the assembly and the Savior of the body. But as the assembly is subject to Messiah, so also let the wives be to their own husband in every way. Husbands, love your wives as Messiah also did love the assembly and gave himself for it, in order to set it apart and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, in order to present it to himself a splendid assembly, not having spot or wrinkle or any of the sort, but that it might be set apart and blameless. In this way, husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but feeds and cherishes it, as also the master does the assembly, because we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. The secret is great, but I speak concerning Messiah and the assembly. Colossians 3, verses 18 through 19. Wives, subject yourselves to your own husband, as is proper to them in the master. Husband, love your wives, and do not be bitter toward them. Paulus also gave us the authority structure in 1 Corinthians 11. And I wish you to know that the head of every man is the Messiah, and the head of a woman is the man, and the head of Messiah is Elohim. 1 Corinthians 11, verse 3. When Yahweh says, husbands, love your wife, he speaks of the woman as a complex being. He calls every man to love his whole wife, just as every man loves his whole self. This means that a husband must do all he can to understand his wife's world. And there are different ways to love them. And that is, one, love her emotionally, meaning that don't be a stoic to your wife. Rather, express how you feel about her, as Shlomo did. My beloved responded and said to me, rise up, my beloved. Rise up, my beautiful. Sorry, let me start over. My beloved responded and said to me, rise up, my love, my beautiful one, and come away. Song of Solomon 2, verse 10. I know of no woman who wouldn't love to hear her husband speak to her like that. The second thing is to love her intellectually. A loving husband graciously convinces his wife that he values her. Intellectual love also means engaging your wife's mind. Many men win the hand of their future wife, by thoughtful, engaging conversation. Too many men fail to take this habit into marriage. Make the habit of washing her by the word again, as Paulus says. Husbands, love your wives, as Messiah also loved the assembly and gave himself for it, in order to set it apart and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. Ephesians 5, verses 25 through 26. The third thing is to love her physically. At the most basic level, by physical love, a husband strives to meet his wife's physical needs. An able man who consistently chooses not to provide with the physical needs of his wife does not love her. Your wife need not be a supermodel to receive regular, sincere compliments. She needs physical love just as much as she needs emotional love. And each man must strive to please his own wife, as Paulus tells us. Let the husband render to his wife what is due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 3. Most of all, love her spiritually. What do I mean, love her spiritually? Well, men tend to be task-oriented, but often we neglect one of our greatest responsibilities, the cultivation of our wives' spiritual lives. We need to become comfortable with saying, as Yahushua, or as he's commonly called, Joshua, son of Nun, said, "But I and my house, we serve Yahweh." Joshua 24, verses 14 through 15. Yahushua understood that as a covenant head, his choices had a profound impact on those under his care. A husband must always think of the spiritual good of his wife. This means making thoughtful, prayerful decisions, even if they are unpopular. These are expressions of love. A husband must be tender of his wife's failure. She needs to know that you love her even if you are saddened by her sin. Be grateful that she's different than you. A loving husband sees his wife as Yahweh's gift to him, even if she is not perfect. She needs to see herself as not a throwaway. It's easy for a man to assign some kind of reason to divorce his wife because of a behavior he disapproves of and says that is idolatry. No, we all fail and are deserving of death and fall short of Yahweh's splendor. And yet Yahweh loves us where we are and works with us. So too, we must build our wives as he has done with us. If a wife's greatest calling is to be submissive to her husband, a loving husband helps his wife to be submissive. Some wives never learn biblical submission because their husbands rarely set a positive example. They usually don't submit to the authority that has been placed in their lives. And so wives see that and think, why should you be an authority to me? You could hardly help your wife do this if you aren't doing it yourself. Ultimately, the more you love Yahweh, the better equipped you will be to truly love your wife. And when you love Yahweh, it will show it in how you love your wife. Yahweh draws us to love him and empowers us to love others. And we learn that from Messiah himself, because he loves the whole assembly of believers with his heart, mind, body, and soul. Only as we come to terms with that, what that means, we will be able to obey Yahweh's word. Husbands, love your wives and do not be bitter towards them. This is what true authority looks like. And this is what should bruise the head of the serpent. May we all strive not to follow our animal nature and listen to the words of Yahweh and submit ourselves to his authority. And in doing so, may we all bring in his kingdom. Hallelujah. If you like this teaching, please comment, like, subscribe, and click on the notification button to be notified of the next teaching. Yahweh bless. Let's smoke. 2-year-olds.